Occurred to me watching Jeff Sessions. He is the Jesse Helms to Donald Trump's Ronald Reagan. He has kept the country going until we can get a president to get in and fix it. If you haven't read my book yet, you will understand the enthusiasm for Trump when you read it, but at this point, only one person needed to read that book, and he read it, and that was Donald Trump. So my work is done. You're probably all hoping I'm going to talk about that poor woman in Kentucky, but I thought I'd talk about something that would change our country forever: immigration. Whenever you get these long pieces on issues that really aren't as important as something that will change our country forever, I always think that the media seems to be hiding something from me. For 3 weeks, when the Republican Senate was trying to defund Obama's amnesty, something they promised they'd do to get us to vote for them in 2014, for 3 weeks, all you saw on television was ISIS. ISIS, ISIS, ISIS. That's when I developed my argument. You don't want to be killed by ISIS. Don't go to Syria. You don't want to be killed by an immigrant. I have nothing I can tell you. And I know a lot of you are probably planning to take your holidays in Syria this year, but let me tell you, it's a nightmare. A lot of connecting flights. You have to change flights in Algeria, get a car from Damascus. But you can be killed in the privacy and comfort of your own home, right here, by an immigrant. You could be killed at Fort Hood, at the Boston Marathon, in Chattanooga, at a military recruiting center. ISIS isn't going to change our country forever. ISIS isn't even going to change the Middle East forever. No, that's immigration. And let's take that poor woman in Kentucky. Why are we even talking about that? You know, Michael Huckabee, running for president, he's gone down and made a big show of defending the woman who won't sign gay marriage licenses. You know, good for her. They won't. Liberals don't enforce federal gun laws, drug laws, immigration laws, but oh, this one woman in Kentucky, you know what? The hatred of the MSM will come down on her. But I recall that Mike Huckabee also said that we need to treat illegal immigrants as if they're Black Americans to make up for slavery. Now, as fun as I think it is when Republicans can't tell the difference in brown people, that's great, Mike. That's just great to compare illegal immigrants to Black Americans who went through slavery and Jim Crow. We wouldn't have to be dealing with gay marriage, but for the last 30 years of immigration. Why was this woman called upon to sign a gay marriage license? Well, because the Supreme Court ruled that gay marriage is a constitutional right. Our Supreme Court can find anything. 200-year-old document, we suddenly discovered a right to gay marriage. I've always said, you know, we needed to get those 9 guys looking for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They can find anything. I've never seen it before. So we needed the Supreme Court to find a right to gay marriage, which they wouldn't have done without Sonia Sotomayor and Eleanor Kagan. And Eleanor Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor would not have been on the Supreme Court if Barack Obama had not been president, and Barack Obama would not have been president but for post-1970 immigration. Post-1970 immigrants are voting 8-2 for the Democrats. This was a specific plan, as you will read in my book, with Teddy Kennedy's 1965 immigration to change the electorate in a more left-wing direction, and they have done it. They have done it. They brag about it. Now that we're close enough to the tipping point, I quote Democrats in my book saying, yeah, this is the Kennedy family's greatest gift to the Democratic Party. One Democratic consultant calls it George McGovern's revenge. They are winning elections they never could have won before. Other than African Americans, no group block votes for the Democrats more than the entire category of immigrants. So don't think that Democrats have been winning the argument. They just changed the voters. It's kind of sweet that they realized they couldn't get Americans to vote for them. They looked out and said, okay, fine, you won't vote for us, America, we're bringing in ringers. And they did, and it's working. So I can understand why the Democrats want this constant dump of third world immigrants on the country, and that's mostly what's been post-1970. I don't want any of you weeping about your great-grandfather at Ellis Island. No, we started getting an entirely different kind of immigrant with the 1965 Immigration Act 20% of whom, I'll paraphrase Donald Trump, 20% are probably good people. They're Republicans. But the other 8 out of 10, the other 80%, I'm sorry, they've got to go. So I understand why Democrats are so enthusiastic about our current immigration policies, which is costing you, taxpayer, a lot of money. What I haven't been able to figure out is why the Republicans are going along with it. The entire country is about to become California, where no Republican can get elected statewide. That's it. That's when we lose everything. Everything bad that has happened, everything that you see them talking about on TV, whether it's Obamacare, the Iran deal, Obama losing the war in Iraq for us, gay marriage. All of this is as a result of immigration. It never could have happened without Obama, and we are looking at, for the rest of our lifetimes, President Obama's, an entire Supreme Court of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, if this isn't stopped. Not only would Obama never have been elected, Romney would have won a bigger landslide. Were you kind of surprised the day after the election in 2012? I know I was. It's the most depressed I've been. For some reason, November 7th, 2012, I remember it well. Romney won, with the same demographics, he would have won a bigger landslide against Obama than Reagan won against Carter in 1980. That's why you're surprised. All that matters is who gets to vote. But the Republicans won't talk about it because the donors want the cheap labor being provided by immigrants. Things Trump has exposed is exactly how beholden these Republicans are to the big donors. I mean, they just want to pretend that the 2014 election never happened, an election that was premised on Republicans promising to stop Obama's executive amnesty. They want to pretend Dave Bratt never happened. Once Trump started talking about anchor babies, Scott Walker, whom I hope to like, came out against anchor babies. One of his big donors intervened and said, no, 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 I'm for anchor babies. And suddenly Scott Walker doesn't have a position on anchor babies.
Wow.
No, everything we talk about as if it's some other problem. Americans are getting shorter. SAT scores going down. Homegrown terrorists. It's all a problem of immigration. Democrats are changing the electorates, and there is no one in our party to stop them until Trump, and of course Jeff Sessions. We have a few good ones who've been holding, oh my gosh, I mean, even among the commentariat, it's basically Phyllis Schlafly, me, a few talk radio hosts, Mickey Kaus, and God bless him, Matt Drudge. I always thought if Matt Drudge goes on vacation, the Democrats and Republicans are going to get together and just pass amnesty in the dead of night, and the country will be over. But we've kept it going. We've kept it going this far. So now you have the leaders of both parties absolutely hysterical with Donald Trump. They are throwing everything they have at him, convening war councils to deal with him. Incidentally, these were not, I wasn't sworn to secrecy, but out of consideration, I will not mention them. I've had private counsels with 2 Republican presidential candidates. This is going back a few years. One I spoke to one-on-one for 3 hours at dinner, basically laying out the entire Donald Trump immigration plan. Another one, I put it in an email to. I just remember that, and I looked it up. That one was from May 2014. I want to call one up, email the other one, and say, if you'd listened to me, you'd be Donald Trump now. It was point by point on immigration. Whatever problems people have with Donald Trump, and I must say, I never thought he'd be my ideal candidate. There are a lot of things that you can complain about, although I'm not hearing most of them. It seems to be mostly nonsense, and mostly name-calling. Well, okay, give me a candidate who hasn't been divorced twice, who isn't married to a model, who isn't bombastic, but who has Donald Trump's positions on immigration. You give me that, Republicans, and I'll believe that your problem with Donald Trump is, oh, he's bombastic. I saw my interview with Jorge Jorge Ramos a week before the book came out. And by the way, he's been good on immigration for a long time. A couple of years ago, for those of you who follow the goings-on at CPAC, it used to be the Conservative Political Action Committee, is now the Chamber of Commerce Political Action Committee. And they finally given up on just, moving me to a small corner. For the first time this past year, I'm just not invited at all anymore. But a few years ago, right after the 2012 election, for close immigration watchers, it was noted that they had several panels on immigration, but they were all the pro-amnesty people. It was like Whit Ayers and Marco Rubio, of course, Grover Norquist, all the ones in favor of mass immigration. There were no anti-immigration speakers, and afterwards it was commented on that there were two, at least of people that they had seen there, two people who specifically denounced our immigration policies. One was me and one was Donald Trump, and that was in March 2013. This is not a new position for Donald Trump. But he did get an advance copy of my book, and he did read it, and that's where he got all that spicy stuff about Mexican rapists. Mass immigration advocates can't win this argument, as we have seen over and over again with Trump. They keep saying, as with Mexican rapists and anchor babies. Oh, well, now he's done, now he's done, now he's finished, and he just keeps going up in the polls. The only way they can win an argument on immigration is not to have it. And that's what they've done for the last 30 years. Which is why my head was exploding when they were talking about ISIS, when the Senate is trying to defund Obama's executive amnesty. It's as if, MSNBC says, okay, we're going to avoid talking about immigration. We'll do Black Lives Matter. And Fox says, yeah, and we'll do ISIS and Hillary's emails. So we got it covered. No one will ever hear about immigration. Part of it is just getting it talked about. People only think about and develop a position on the things they hear about. They're busy, they have, Little League and jobs. They come home, turn on TV, and that's, you can probably, everyone in this room, we can probably, well, you have positions on immigration too, this is an unusual crowd. But you can go to the hotel bar. Everybody, I bet you, will have a position on Ferguson, on the UVA fake rape, probably on the Iran deal. But until Trump came along, you can win bar bets on questions about immigration. The very existence of anchor babies was a shocker. They get hysterical over all the words used to discuss immigration in order to prevent us from speaking about it, as Donald Trump is finding out. They say, okay, fine, let's talk about immigration. Here are the ground rules. You can't use the word amnesty, third world, peasant, anchor baby, sanctuary city. Okay, go. It's like saying, you found an effective argument to use against us, so we're going to the judges and ruling that argument out of order. You've got a good three-point shooter, so we're not counting three-point shots anymore. There is nothing offensive about the term anchor baby. It's a boating metaphor. There's nothing racial about it, there's nothing sexual about it. An illegal alien runs across the border, drops a baby, and says, haha, you didn't catch me, my kid's a citizen, anchoring the entire family and the entire extended family in this country eligible for full welfare benefits. The only reason they don't want us talking about anchor babies is they don't want us to find out about anchor babies. Nearly 500,000 kids a year become auto citizens and auto welfare recipients by having their parents run across the border and drop the baby here. So apparently we can't hold kids responsible for the illegal behavior of their parents, but we can hold some white people accountable for the behavior of other white people 150 years ago. We are still accountable for that. Though most Republicans seem to have forgotten that too. I believe every single Republican candidate, other than Donald Trump, believes that the whole purpose of the Civil War was to make sure illegal aliens could drop babies and they'd be citizens. I mean, I've seen Chris Christie and Carly Fiorina say that. As if that was the burning issue in 1868. You know what? We've got to make sure if an illegal alien runs across the border and has a kid, that kid has got to be a citizen. Oh yeah, you're kidding me. That's not already in the Constitution? It's insane. It's madness. And it not only has to be repealed, it has to be made retroactive. This weird idea has taken hold that that it's somehow unfair for America to take the best immigrants it can get, the way it has historically, I might add, before the welfare state. We used to get the best of the best. Pre-1970 immigrants were more educated than the native-born, bought more houses than the native-born. 30% of them went home. Now nobody goes home, they go on welfare. Why would you go home? So we ended up getting the creme de la creme from around the world. No, that's considered unfair. It's unfair for that top model to date only rich, good-looking guys. She should be forced to date, poor, unemployed losers. And why don't the New England Patriots why don't we force them to take the blind kid with one leg instead of all those 300-pound star linebackers? It's not fair. And also, so that the blind kid with one leg doesn't get lonely, we have to take his cousins too. Because we wouldn't want our immigrants to get lonely. Not only do poor immigrants get to come live here, they get to bring their entire families. This is how Pakistani pushcart operators, illiterate in their own language, never mind ours, are taking precedence over Danish surgeons. It's absolute madness. Our country is not a battered woman's shelter. Any other policy should be used to benefit the people already here, and that includes the immigrants. The idea that people think, the fancy rich people think they're defending Lupe the maid by defending amnesty or illegal immigration. Well, no, Lupe, for some reason, decided to come to the United States, not to Honduras, not to Mexico, not to Pakistan. Well, the country she came to is going to be gone if we don't stop our current immigration policies. And then the rest of the world can see what it's like without the United States of America. Wait for Mexico to rescue you, because that's going to be our country. I thought when I wrote this book, I didn't plan for it to be an entire book about immigration. I didn't think I could get people to read an entire book about immigration, so much as I smuggled in a discussion of Joe McCarthy into a larger book about liberal treason. In that book, that was my plan with immigration in this book. I had a larger theme, but then when I started doing basic research, like, oh, how many immigrants are in prison? I found a massive cover-up going on, which I describe in my book, and describe, most of it reads like Forensic Files on Law and Order. There's a lot of disgusting criminal cases. My sister-in-law, actually my brother told me my sister-in-law was waking up with nightmares reading my book, because a lot of the stories are pretty shocking, but I have to tell them because the media is hiding them. The media is hiding. This is where we got the thing with Lewiston man arrested for gang rape. No, it's not Lewiston man. Come on, give me a break. They're not homegrown terrorists. It's not the freckled-faced boy next door. But it ended up being the entire book because of that. And we're in desperate times right now. I wouldn't have written the book if I didn't think there was still hope for America. But I must tell you, it is a very, very narrow window of hope. If we don't elect a president that will turn back this policy immediately, it will be over. We are being outvoted by foreigners. And now I look at everything that's happened, just blow after blow after blow, not only from the Obama administration, but first Obama getting elected. Then Republicans betraying us after 2014. Well, before that, and then Romney losing. you just think, oh, the window, it's closing, it's closing, it's closing. And now I think maybe all of that had to happen. It had to happen that way to give an opportunity for Donald Trump to come forward. They didn't like self-deportation. How do you like mass deportation and a wall? Thank you. I'll take your questions.
St. Louis, and welcome back. We loved having you when you came and spoke a couple years ago for our policy conference. We just had in the front page of our paper today that our mayor is delighted to welcome to St. Louis 1,000 Syrians. Tomorrow, CARE and all the Palestinian liberation groups and some of the Ferguson groups are going to have a march to encourage St. Louis to take 1,000 Syrians. Now this is being done, this is not the illegals, this is being done through the State Department, through the UN, through the Refugee Resettlement Program. Would you address that for a minute and give us some suggestions on pushback? Because this thing is moving so fast to destabilize town after town.
Yes. Yes, no, I have a section on the humanitarian cases in my book. And they're all either proved frauds or frauds that haven't been proved yet. No, we aren't rescuing the world's poor. We're bringing in terrorists mostly. Of the refugees, about 45% are from Muslim countries, as I wrote in my column this week, and I covered some of this in my book. One was Boise man from Uzbekistan. Hilariously, the family claimed to be Christian converts fleeing persecution in Uzbekistan. And then of course, because they're refugees, the FBI have to start following them immediately. This guy comes in with his sister, his wife, his little kids, his 2 ailing parents, never had a job. So even before we get to the terrorism part, how is that helping America? Shouldn't that be the question? Is this making our lives better or worse? And then, no, of course, he's, calling his buddies back in Uzbekistan. There are hundreds of Uzbeks living in Boise, Idaho. He's calling his buddies in Uzbekistan, telling them, I'm very close to the infidels. What would you think? We have vehicles, we have transportation, I'm sure provided by the government. He's planning on blowing up military facilities in Texas and I think Idaho, Arizona, Utah. We've brought in hundreds of Iraqis who were blowing up our troops in Iraq. This one guy I wrote about again in today's column, they found his fingerprints on unexploded boxes of IEDs in Iraq. And of course they had him on tape with his other Iraqi buddies. They were here in America looking for a specific US captain they had known in Iraq. Just on the money we would save on the FBI having to follow these dear beloved refugees, we could build the wall. Just on the cost of the court translators. No, it's absolutely a fraud. It is being led, first of all, by people who hate America. They think we're a bad country and we should be punished. And they run all these immigration groups. Again, as I described in my book, even leaving aside the terrorism cases, just the fraudulent cases, there are all these immigration outfits run by ACLU and George Soros and all the rest of the anti-American groups, and they have tapes and scripts, and they say, where are you from? Oh, Russia, say you're being persecuted because you're gay. Congo, say you were gang raped by troops. Someplace else, genital mutilation. Oh wait, there's no genital mutilation there. You're going to have to claim rape by the government too. They have scripts for them to follow. So basically, every time a refugee becomes famous, but Amadou Diallo in New York, killed by police because he didn't speak English and didn't grasp that when cops are pointing guns at you and yelling at you, the best practice is to put your hands up. He was a refugee. Total invented story. He had grown up. Traveled the world with his father. He lived in Japan, here, there, and the other place. Completely invented story. Another Diallo, the Nafastasu Diallo, the maid who accused the IMF head, who was a creep, but he didn't rape her. That was a scam. In the Sofitel Hotel in New York a few years ago. Well, she made a spectacle of herself, so people look at her asylum application. And now the entire thing was nonsense made up from beginning to end. Surprisingly, even the New York Times and the New Yorker magazine have written about these refugee mills where they just have scripts that they pass out and they get passed around among immigrants. the whole thing is a scam, and the refugee thing in particular, I think it is mostly run by people who want to destroy America, which is why I totally support, and it's amazing, and I thank you, Jeff Sessions, for this, for Donald Trump coming out for a moratorium, something I do recommend in my book, because, I mean, my argument is, originally when I was writing the book, I was thinking, well, no, let's just go back and get good immigrants, but no, first we need to shut it down, because every one of these anti-American immigration groups has got to go out of business. They have to go fight in gender equality. Find some other way to attack America, because it is not a matter of changing a few laws. The laws are on the books. I was so, I gave an advance copy of my book to Bill O'Reilly, which he obviously has not read and refuses to put me on, but he keeps having discussions about immigration, which he gets completely wrong. And one time I was about to do Megan's show, I was sitting in the green room and I'm listening to Bill O'Reilly talk about this big thing he's pushing, Kate's Law, which would, if you're an illegal alien, you've committed a felony, 5-year mandatory sentence, which, okay, fine, it keeps it in the news, but this is he's championing this big cause. So I went on Megan and said, there's some other hosts on your network pushing this Kate's Law, but the law in the books already prescribes 20 years in prison for that. If only there was someone with a best-selling book on the topic he could interview. Engage in marriage fraud. A lot of this stuff is already on the books, but it's not being enforced because the exact same people who are working for George Soros's Open Society Institute then become immigration judges. Sorry, that was a really long answer. Different vehicle for amnesty. It allows the free movement of people, something else pushed through in the dark of night. This is what we elected Republicans in 2014 for? And I mean, this is why whenever you read, whether it's pro or con about Donald Trump, if the article doesn't mention immigration, you're being lied to. It is not because he's, not politically correct. That's Chris Christie. He'd be dominating the polls. It's not because he's outside of Washington. Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson are outside of politics altogether. It's not because he's a fighter. Scott Walker and Ted Cruz are fighters. It is 100% because of immigration, and they are hiding it. They are lying to you if they say it's anything else. The H-1B chapter I included, that's the same chapter as the refugees, because I just put them together because these are the most sympathetic cases, and the ones that seem the most sympathetic, the Republicans fall for the most often. In fact, my love, Donald Trump briefly said that perhaps we should take some of the Syrian refugees. I started firing off emails to his campaign guy and wrote the article and sent it to his campaign guy and said, no, stop him. And it was just a moment of weakness. He's come right back. But the compassionate side, because Americans are compassionate people, and they can get snowed by the humanitarian cases, and even Mitt Romney, who is, as you'll find out when you read my book, until Donald Trump, the best we ever had on immigration. He has a 20-year record of being good on illegal immigration. Not as good as Donald Trump. But even Mitt Romney used to say, you may remember, we ought to staple a green card to anyone who gets an advanced degree in mathematics or science. At least when Trump says it, he says you have to be #1 in your class at Harvard, Yale, or Wharton, I think he says. Okay, fine. I'm fine with that. #1 in one of those 3 schools, we'll take them. That isn't what the H-1B visas are being used for. It's indentured servitude. You get an H-1B that's allegedly of high-tech workers. I'll just tell you this quickly. The H-1B visa is attached to an employer, so you can't go to another job. So it's indentured servitude. That's why Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates like it. They're underpaying these standard computer programmers. And meanwhile, for 20 years we've been telling kids, you want a good future young man, major in science, technology, engineering, or math. Well, no, sorry, they're bringing in foreigners who'll type away in their cubby holes for 18 hours, go home and collapse in bed. I promise you, the people who built, Pakistan's nuclear bomb are doing fine in Pakistan. They don't need to come here, or India, whoever has it. Trade, H-1B, visas, there was one other thing.
TISA, the trade and services.
Yeah, I care about immigration. I think Trump is right on trade. But the main thing I'd say is I keep waiting for Trump to appall me on something, and I won't care. I thought I was having too many stupid people follow me on Twitter. So a couple of weeks ago, I sent out a tweet knowing it would gin up the idiots. It was right after Trump came out with his 6-page immigration statement, and if you haven't read it, you must read it. It is the most magnificent document since the Magna Carta. And it won't be presented to you in the media. It's a quick read, it is brilliant, it is perfect. And so I woke up Saturday morning, I read it, and I was just sending out tweet after tweet, and at one point, like I say, I had too many stupid people following me on Twitter. So I said, I don't care if Donald Trump performs abortions in the White House, as long as he sticks to this immigration plan, which, you know, is hyperbole to make a point. But also, okay, let's say, you know, you had your sense of humor removed at birth, which it was a horrible operation that happened about 30 years ago with a lot of children. You still see people wandering around like Chris Matthews with no sense of humor today. It's very sad. What is their plan of ending abortion? Tell me your plan so I can laugh hard at it. You're going to elect a Republican president? How are you going to do that? You're not going to. You're going to elect a Republican president who's going to appoint the Supreme Court justices who will finally allow states to vote on abortion and overturn Roe v. Wade? That's never going to happen if we don't stop our current immigration policy. Everything